In the early hours of Valentine's Day 2020, after a late-night Waffle House stop, a college senior sat across from her ex-boyfriend in his aunt's house on Chestnut Hill Road in Fort Valley, Georgia. He's pouring his heart out, telling her he loves her. She responds with a nervous laugh. Within hours, her friends will start receiving text messages from her phone that don't sound like her at all. Messages that avoid video calls. Messages that feel wrong. By the next morning, her father will be driving 90 miles from Atlanta, his gut telling him something terrible has happened. 4 days later, a deputy will follow tire tracks into the woods and discover her body partially covered with branches, 150 yards from a muddy back road. And 2 years after that, a courtroom will hear testimony about what happened after that laugh. About a man who claimed he blacked out. About a trunk. About a car bumper that fell off on rough terrain. About a cell phone hidden in a drainage pipe. About a confession whispered to a best friend just 2 days later. This is the story of Anitra Gunn, a 23-year-old agriculture major who had survived losing her mother in high school and was months away from graduating Fort Valley State University. A young woman who worked at a local restaurant, stayed close to her family, and was known for her gentle personality and dependability. On Valentine's Day 2020, her future was stolen from her, not by a stranger, not by random violence, but by someone she had been trying to leave for months. Someone who couldn't accept that she was done. Someone whose jealousy had been escalating through thousands of text messages. Someone who had already vandalized her home just 9 days earlier, slashing her tires and throwing bricks through her windows at 3 in the morning. Before we get into the details of what happened that Valentine's Day morning, we need to understand who Anitra Gunn was and how she ended up in that house with a man she had tried to break away from multiple times. Anitra Lachi Gunn grew up in the Atlanta area with her father Christopher Gunn, her mother, and her siblings. She attended schools in Fulton County and graduated from Westlake High School in 2016. From early on, Anitra was known for certain qualities that stayed with her throughout her life. She was gentle, dependable, the kind of person friends could rely on without question. She had ambition mixed with kindness, a combination that made her memorable to teachers, classmates, and anyone who spent time around her. The people who knew Anitra in her younger years remember a girl who was thoughtful and considerate. She wasn't loud or attention-seeking. She didn't demand the spotlight, the one who remembered birthdays, the one who checked in when someone seemed down, the one who offered help without being asked. These qualities made her beloved among her peers and respected by adults in her life. In the Fulton County school system, Anitra was a solid student. She wasn't necessarily at the top of every class, but she was consistent. She showed up. She did the work. She took her education seriously. Teachers appreciated her because she was engaged and respectful. She asked questions when she didn't understand something. She helped classmates who were struggling. She participated in class discussions thoughtfully. But Anitra's teenage years weren't easy. In 2014, when she was still in high school, her mother passed away. Losing a parent during adolescence shapes a person in profound ways. For Anitra, it seemed to strengthen her resilience, while also making her value family connections even more deeply. She stayed close to her father Christopher and her siblings. They became her anchor, the people she checked in with regularly, the ones who knew when something was wrong just by the tone of her voice. The loss of her mother was devastating, but Anitra didn't let grief derail her completely. She continued attending school. She continued being there for her siblings. She continued pursuing her goals. This resilience would become one of her defining characteristics. She had learned at a young age that life brings hardship, but you keep moving forward. You take care of the people you love. You honor those you've lost by living well. Christopher Gunn watched his daughter navigate this difficult period with a mixture of admiration and concern. He saw how hard she worked to stay positive. He saw how she supported her siblings even while dealing with her own grief. He saw the maturity that loss had forced upon her, and he made sure she knew he was always there for her no matter what. After graduating from Westlake High School in 2016, Anitra enrolled at Fort Valley State University, a historically black university located about 90 miles south of Atlanta in Fort Valley, Georgia. She chose to major in agriculture, a field that reflected her practical nature and interest in things that mattered tangibly. She wasn't drawn to flashy careers or status symbols. She wanted to build something real and useful. The choice of agriculture as a major spoke to Anitra's character. This wasn't a field chosen for prestige or high starting salaries. It was chosen because Anitra saw value in understanding how things grow, how systems sustain themselves, how communities can be fed. She was interested in the practical applications of agricultural science, how farming techniques could be improved, how crops could be more resilient, how food security could be strengthened in underserved communities. Fort Valley State sits in a town of about 9,000 people in Peach County. The university drives much of the community's energy. It's a place where students and locals interact regularly, where the campus feels integrated into the town rather than separate from it, where you're likely to see students at local businesses, restaurants, and community events. Anitra embraced this environment completely. She rented a place on West Church Street in Fort Valley, a modest house that became her home base during her college years. The neighborhood was typical of college housing areas, mix of students and long-term residents, quiet most of the time but occasionally lively when students hosted gatherings, the kind of place where neighbors looked out for each other, at least somewhat. She worked at 1836 Restaurant and Lounge alongside other Fort Valley State students. The restaurant was a popular spot in the area, known for good food and a welcoming atmosphere. Working there meant Anitra was part of the local community in a meaningful way. She wasn't just a student passing through. She was someone who contributed to the town's daily life. Her co-workers remembered her as reliable and friendly. She showed up for her shifts. She did her work well. She treated customers with warmth. She was the kind of employee managers appreciated because they never had to worry about whether she would show up or do her job properly. At Fort Valley State, Anitra had built a life that balanced academics, work, and social connections. She attended classes regularly and took her coursework seriously. She had friends on campus who knew her as someone fun to be around, but also grounded and responsible. She participated in campus activities when her schedule allowed. She maintained that same quality that had defined her in high school, being someone people could count on. By early 2020, Anitra was in her senior year. She was months away from graduating with her bachelor's degree in agriculture. She had survived losing her mother. She had built a life away from Atlanta while staying connected to her family. She had worked and studied her way to the edge of accomplishment. She had job prospects to consider. She had decisions to make about where her career would take her. Her future should have been bright and open. She should have been focused on final projects, graduation preparations, and planning for life after college. Instead, she was dealing with an ex-boyfriend who wouldn't let go. Christopher Gunn was more than just a father to Anitra. After his wife passed away in 2014, he became even more central to his children's lives. For Anitra specifically, that relationship was marked by frequent communication and deep mutual care. They talked regularly. Not just obligatory check-ins, but real conversations. He knew her schedule. He knew her friends. He knew when she was stressed about school or work. And most importantly, he knew when something was wrong. That connection would become crucial on February 15, 2020, when Anitra didn't respond to his messages or calls. Christopher didn't wait or hope she was just busy. He knew immediately that something terrible had happened. He drove from Atlanta to Fort Valley that day and filed a missing person report. A father knows. Now let's talk about DeMarcus Devontae Little. He was 23 years old in early 2020. To many people who encountered him casually, he probably seemed like someone building a solid, respectable life. He was a U.S. Army sergeant stationed at Fort Gordon in Augusta, Georgia. Fort Gordon is a major military installation focused on cyber operations and signal intelligence. Being stationed there suggested DeMarcus had technical skills and military training. Being a sergeant at age 23 suggested he had advanced in rank relatively quickly. The military is often seen as an institution that instills discipline, structure, and accountability. Soldiers are trained to follow orders, respect chain of command, and work as part of a team. They're taught values like honor, integrity, and selfless service. On paper, someone who has succeeded in this environment should be trustworthy and responsible. From the outside, This looked like the profile of a disciplined, stable young man, someone with structure in his life, someone with a career path, someone with a steady income and benefits, the kind of person who might seem like a catch to someone looking for a partner, someone reliable, someone with direction, someone who had their life together. But that external image told almost nothing about what DeMarcus was actually like in his personal relationships. The person he was at work, the soldier who followed orders and completed missions, was apparently very different from the person he became in romantic relationships. This disconnect between public persona and private behavior is common in cases of intimate partner violence. People who seem perfectly normal, even admirable, to coworkers and acquaintances can be controlling and dangerous behind closed doors. Behind the professional soldier image was someone whose behavior in romantic relationships was deeply problematic. Court testimony and evidence presented at trial would reveal a pattern that had been building for months before Anitra's death. DeMarcus was intensely jealous. He accused Anitra repeatedly of cheating even when she wasn't. He became suspicious and confrontational about any male friends she had or interacted with. He monitored her activities constantly. He needed to know where she was, who she was with, what she was doing at all times. This kind of jealousy isn't flattering or romantic. It's controlling. It's based on a belief that a partner is property to be monitored rather than a person with autonomy. It creates an atmosphere where the other person feels they have to justify every interaction, every outing, every friendship. It's exhausting and suffocating. When Anitra tried to create distance or end the relationship, DeMarcus employed emotional manipulation tactics. He would send long messages designed to make her feel guilty for wanting to leave. He would oscillate between anger and declarations of love, keeping her off balance. He would make her feel responsible for his emotional state. He would suggest that if she just did things differently, if she just stopped talking to other men, if she just gave him another chance, everything would be fine. These behaviors weren't occasional or mild. They were pervasive and documented through thousands of text messages that would later be entered into evidence at trial. The relationship didn't start with property destruction and violence. It started with behaviors that many people might dismiss as jealousy or someone being emotional, but those behaviors intensified over time. By fall 2019, the text message exchanges were already filled with arguments and accusations. Anitra was already trying to set boundaries. By November 1st, 2019, she attempted to end the relationship completely. DeMarcus did not accept that ending. Throughout November, December, and January, he continued contacting her, manipulating her, accusing her. Then on February 5th, 2020, the pattern escalated dramatically. At approximately 3 in the morning, Anitra's tires were slashed and bricks were thrown through her windows. DeMarcus was responsible for this vandalism. The message was clear. I know where you live. I can reach you. You can't escape me. When prosecutors prepared for trial, they had access to thousands of text messages between Anitra and DeMarcus, spanning many months. These messages painted a clear picture of a relationship that was toxic and only got worse over time. The messages from fall 2019 showed frequent arguments. DeMarcus would accuse Anitra of cheating or being unfaithful. She would deny the accusations and express frustration. He would become angry. She would try to create boundaries. He would either ignore those boundaries or find ways around them. On November 1st, 2019, Anitra tried to end the relationship clearly and completely. The text messages from that day showed her attempting to make a clean break. She told DeMarcus that they needed to stop communicating. She explained that the relationship wasn't healthy. She expressed that she wanted to move on with her life. DeMarcus's response was not acceptance. He continued messaging her. He questioned her decision. He accused her of having other reasons for leaving him. This moment established something crucial. DeMarcus did not believe Anitra had the right to leave him. In his mind, the relationship continued as long as he wanted it to continue, regardless of what she wanted. Just 5 days later, Little and Anitra were texting again. This time, DeMarcus was questioning Anitra's relationship with another man. The messages showed him saying things like, We are going to have serious problems if you go out with him. DeMarcus even sent a screenshot of a text message to her, which showed him offering $200 to harm the man he believed had a relationship with Anitra. These weren't empty threats made in passing. These were calculated attempts at intimidation. Then on January 13, 2020, text messages reveal Anitra's distress over her relationship with DeMarcus. She sent him a message that read, "You just came in my house last night without open invitation, touched me several times after repeatedly asking you not to, forcefully took my keys away from me, but when I retaliated, I was the bad guy." That message was sent a month before she was taken from this world. The warning signs were everywhere. The escalation was clear. But DeMarcus wasn't going to let her go. Where are you watching from? Drop your locations in the comments below. And if you've made it this far in the story, leave a comment saying, "Justice for Anitra," so I know who's still following along. February 5th, 2020, approximately 3 in the morning. Anitra was inside her house on West Church Street in Fort Valley. She had a male friend staying over. A loud noise startled both of them awake. When they went to investigate, they discovered something alarming. Anitra's car tires had been slashed. All of them. And 2 bricks had been thrown through her windows, shattering glass into her living space. The timing was no coincidence. This happened at 3 in the morning when Anitra had a male friend at her house. The message was clear. "I know when you have men over. I can strike at any time." It was meant to frighten and intimidate. When Fort Valley police responded to the vandalism report, Anitra initially didn't name DeMarcus as the person responsible in the official report. Perhaps she was scared of further escalation. Perhaps she hoped that if she didn't make it a police matter, he would stop. Whatever her reasoning, that decision wouldn't protect her. Investigators would later establish that DeMarcus was responsible. He would eventually admit to causing the damage himself. The February 5th incident was an obvious warning sign. When someone escalates from sending threatening messages to physically destroying property at your home in the middle of the night, they have crossed a line that indicates genuine danger. Friends who knew about the vandalism were concerned. But 9 days later, that concern would prove tragically justified. On the evening of February 13th, 2020, Anitra attended a party. This was normal behavior for a college senior, but this particular party would prove significant because DeMarcus Little was also there. So was his close friend, Javon Abram. When people started leaving around 11 at night, Anitra, DeMarcus, and Javon left together. Javon drove his vehicle with both Anitra and DeMarcus as passengers. They went to retrieve Anitra's car. Once she had her car, instead of going their separate ways, Anitra and DeMarcus decided to go somewhere together. They chose Waffle House. Around 2 in the morning on Valentine's Day morning, February 14th, 2020, surveillance cameras at a local Waffle House captured Anitra Gunn and DeMarcus Little sitting across from each other in a booth. They spent approximately half an hour there. The footage doesn't include audio, so we don't know what they discussed. But we do know this was the last time Anitra would be seen alive on camera. That surveillance footage would become important for several reasons. It established that Anitra was alive, and with DeMarcus at approximately 2:30 in the morning on Valentine's Day. It showed they left Waffle House together. After leaving, Anitra and DeMarcus went to his aunt's house on Chestnut Hill Road in Fort Valley. This location would later be identified as the last confirmed place Anitra Gunn was seen alive. Based on later testimony from Javon Abram, who heard DeMarcus's confession 2 days later, the prosecution presented this account. Anitra and DeMarcus were at his aunt's house. At some point in the early hours of Valentine's Day morning, DeMarcus told Anitra that he loved her. He poured out his feelings. According to what he later told his friend, Anitra responded by laughing, not cruelly, just nervously, the way people do when they're uncomfortable. That laugh triggered rage in DeMarcus. He claimed to his friend that he blacked out. What happened next was that he strangled Anitra Gunn to death. This occurred sometime in the early morning hours of Valentine's Day. Once Anitra had passed away, DeMarcus chose to cover up what happened. According to Javon's later testimony, he placed Anitra's body in the trunk of her white Chevy Cruze. He then drove to a remote wooded area in Crawford County. DeMarcus found a spot approximately 150 yards off Greer Road in Crawford County. He placed Anitra's body in the woods and partially covered it with branches. During the drive there on rough terrain, the front bumper of Anitra's car became damaged and eventually fell off. He would later retrieve it with Javon's help. When DeMarcus returned to Fort Valley, he abandoned Anitra's car several blocks from her house. Then he took Anitra's cell phone and hid it inside a drainage pipe, hoping it would never be found. But DeMarcus wasn't done. He needed to create the appearance that Anitra was still alive. On the morning of February 14th, between approximately 8 in the morning and 11 in the morning, several of Anitra's friends began receiving text messages from her phone. The messages seemed strange immediately. They included abrupt invitations that didn't match how Anitra typically communicated, comments that didn't sound like her, avoidance of video calls when friends suggested them. One friend, David Howard, who went by the nickname Scoot, received especially odd messages. Anitra's phone texted him asking for his address, which was strange because Anitra already knew where he lived. Then Scoot noticed something alarming. A black Toyota Corolla with red pinstripes drove by his house multiple times. He recognized the vehicle as belonging to DeMarcus Little. The prosecution would argue that DeMarcus sent these messages, trying to create the appearance that she was alive on Valentine's Day morning. But the messages had the opposite effect. They immediately alarmed her friends. By 11 in the morning on February 14th, Anitra's phone went completely silent. Thank you for your incredible support. This channel thrives because of viewers like you. Join our YouTube membership today to unlock exclusive perks, enjoy premium content, and help us keep creating the stories you love. February 15th, 2020 began with Christopher Gunn in Atlanta, increasingly worried. He hadn't been able to reach his daughter Anitra since the previous day. For most parents, this might not immediately trigger alarm. But Christopher knew his daughter. He knew her patterns. He knew she would never just ignore him without explanation. He knew about the relationship troubles. He knew about the vandalism incident. So Christopher did what a parent does when every instinct is screaming that something is wrong. He got in his car and drove the roughly 90 miles south to Fort Valley. When Christopher arrived, he went directly to the Fort Valley Police Department and filed an official missing person report. Officers began investigating immediately. They went to Anitra's house on West Church Street. No one was home. Then they found something significant. Anitra's white 2013 Chevy Cruze, abandoned several blocks from her house. The car had fresh front-end damage. The front bumper was completely missing. Inside the car, investigators found Anitra's personal belongings. Her wallet was there, but Anitra wasn't there, and her phone wasn't there either. Within hours, a multi-agency task force formed. Fort Valley Police Department, Peach County Sheriff's Office, Georgia Bureau of Investigation, Georgia State Patrol Aviation Unit, and hundreds of community volunteers all joined the search. The task force began systematically searching areas around Fort Valley. They focused on locations she was known to frequent. But as days passed, there was still no sign of Anitra Gunn. While searching for Anitra, investigators requested her phone records. Those records showed the last location where her phone had pinged cell towers. The data led investigators to a slightly deserted area in Fort Valley. Officers searched that area thoroughly. They eventually found Anitra's phone hidden inside a drainage pipe. This discovery was significant. First, it meant someone had deliberately hidden the phone. Second, the location didn't match any place Anitra would normally be. Third, once they accessed the phone's contents, they would have evidence of all the threatening messages from DeMarcus. The Georgia Bureau of Investigation processed Anitra's Chevy Cruze forensically. They documented the damage. The missing front bumper was particularly significant. The damage pattern suggested the car had been driven over rough terrain. Sheriff Terry Dees held a press conference showing photos of the damaged car, specifically mentioning the missing bumper. By February 18th, investigators had compiled enough information to consider DeMarcus Little a person of interest. The pattern of threatening and controlling text messages. The February 5th vandalism, being the last person seen with Anitra. The suspicious text messages sent from Anitra's phone. The phone hidden in an unusual location. David Howard's account of seeing DeMarcus's car driving by his house multiple times. All of it pointed in one direction. On February 18, 2020, a deputy from Peach County Sheriff's Office was searching areas near the Peach-Crawford County line. He noticed tire tracks leading off Greer Road into a wooded area. The tracks looked relatively fresh. The deputy followed the tracks on foot. He walked approximately 150 to 200 yards into the woods. Then he saw something that confirmed everyone's worst fears: a young woman's body, partially covered with branches. Nearby on the ground was a piece of white plastic, the front bumper from a Chevy Cruze. The Georgia Bureau of Investigation conducted an autopsy on February 20, 2020. The findings were definitive. Anitra Gunn's death was ruled a homicide. The medical examination confirmed she had been manually strangled. These findings eliminated any possibility that this was an accident. News that Anitra's body had been found spread quickly. The Fort Valley State University community was devastated. Fort Valley State University President Paul Jones released a statement expressing profound sadness. A balloon release was organized to honor Anitra's memory. Hundreds gathered on West Church Street where she had lived. Christopher Gunn released a statement on Facebook thanking everyone who had searched for his daughter. "Please continue to pray for us as there are no words to describe this hurt," he wrote. On February 18, 2020, the same day Anitra's body was found, Fort Valley police arrested DeMarcus Little. But they didn't immediately charge him with murder. Instead, they arrested him for criminal damage to property related to the February 5 vandalism incident. By arresting DeMarcus on the property damage charges, police could take him into custody immediately. It gave them time to continue building evidence. It kept DeMarcus in custody where he couldn't flee. Just before 5:30 in the evening on Friday, February 21, 2020, law enforcement formally charged DeMarcus Little with malice murder in the death of Anitra Gunn. DeMarcus had appeared in court earlier that day for the property damage charges. The judge had set bond at $10,000, but prosecutors filed the murder charges before he could post bond, meaning he remained in custody. On February 24, 2020, the arrest warrant was made public. According to the warrant, DeMarcus Little allegedly strangled Anitra on Valentine's Day, February 14, 2020, at some point between 2:30 in the morning and 11:59 at night. The location was identified as near Greer Road in Crawford County. The medical examination had confirmed the cause. The manner of death was homicide. DeMarcus appeared in court on February 24th for the murder charge. Judge Connie Williford presided. The state sought to hold DeMarcus without bond. Judge Williford agreed. DeMarcus Little was held without bond pending trial. On February 26, 2020, the Georgia Bureau of Investigation announced another arrest. Javon Abram, age 21, DeMarcus Little's close friend, had been taken into custody. The charges against Javon were making false statements to law enforcement and concealing the death of another person. These charges indicated that Javon had initially lied to police about what he knew. Then, at some point, he had told investigators what actually happened, and what he told them changed the entire case. According to testimony that would later be presented at trial, Javon gave investigators a detailed account of what DeMarcus had told him on February 16, 2020, 2 days after Valentine's Day. On February 16th, Javon said, he and DeMarcus went to church together. After church, as they were driving, DeMarcus made a confession. DeMarcus told Javon that he had expressed his feelings to Anitra on Valentine's Day. He said he told her how much he loved her. Instead of responding positively, Anitra laughed. The laugh was probably nervous. But to DeMarcus, that laugh was devastating. DeMarcus claimed he blacked out. According to what DeMarcus told Javon, he strangled Anitra. He then placed her body in the trunk of her car. He drove to Crawford County and left her body in the woods. The bumper fell off during the rough drive. He returned to Fort Valley and abandoned her car. He hid her phone in a drainage pipe. But DeMarcus's confession to Javon didn't end there. DeMarcus actually took Javon to the area where he had left Anitra's body. DeMarcus needed help retrieving the car bumper that had fallen off. Javon went with DeMarcus to the area off Greer Road. They found the white Chevy Cruze bumper. They took it with them. Then they drove to a highway and disposed of this evidence by throwing it off an overpass. Eventually, Javon decided to tell the truth. Once Anitra's body was found on February 18th, the pressure intensified. This was now officially a murder investigation. Javon had lied to police initially. Those lies could be proven false. He faced serious criminal charges himself. He also had to live with the knowledge of what his friend had done. Eventually, Javon told investigators the truth. What made Javon's testimony powerful was that much of it could be corroborated. Investigators verified GPS and cell phone location data, showing DeMarcus's phone in Crawford County, where Anitra's body was found. The location where Javon said they disposed of the bumper matched where investigators found it. The timeline matched surveillance footage and phone records. Everything Javon said checked out. In March 2022, more than 2 years after Anitra's death, DeMarcus Little finally stood trial in Peach County Superior Court. Judge Connie Williford presided. The prosecution, led by Assistant District Attorney Neil Halverson, delivered an opening statement that laid out their theory clearly. They told the jury this was a story about control, jealousy, and violence. About a man who couldn't accept that a relationship was over. About escalating behavior that began with threatening text messages, progressed to property destruction, and ended in taking someone's life. Halverson walked the jury through the timeline. The thousands of text messages. Anitra's attempts to end things in November 2019. DeMarcus's refusal to accept that ending. The February 5th vandalism. The party on February 13th. The Waffle House surveillance on Valentine's Day morning. The house on Chestnut Hill Road. The confession to a friend. The body found in the woods. Over several days, prosecutors presented exhaustive evidence of the text messages between Anitra and DeMarcus. They walked the jury through specific exchanges, showing the pattern and escalation. Messages where DeMarcus accused Anitra of cheating. Messages where she denied the accusations. Messages where he threatened to confront other men. Messages where she explicitly told him his behavior was manipulative. Messages where she tried to end all contact. Messages where he ignored those boundaries. The defense would argue these messages just showed a rocky relationship. But prosecutors used them to establish DeMarcus's mindset. He believed he had a right to control who Anitra talked to, where she went, and whether she could end their relationship. Prosecutors presented multiple categories of evidence. The autopsy report confirming manual strangulation, cell phone location data placing DeMarcus's phone in Crawford County, surveillance footage from Waffle House, the damaged Chevy Cruze, the phone found in the drainage pipe, the bumper recovered from where Javon said they threw it. Each piece by itself might not be conclusive, but together they formed a compelling narrative matching Javon's testimony. The most crucial witness was Javon Abram. He took the stand on day 5 of the trial. Under oath, Javon testified that he did not help harm Anitra. He did not help hide her body initially, and he was not getting any special deal from prosecutors. Javon then described February 16, 2020. He and DeMarcus had gone to church. Afterward, DeMarcus confessed. Javon recounted the details: the profession of love, the laugh, the claimed blackout, the strangulation, the trunk, the drive to Crawford County, the bumper damage, hiding the phone. Then Javon described how DeMarcus had taken him to retrieve the bumper. They disposed of it on a highway. Javon led police to that exact location after deciding to tell the truth, and investigators found the bumper exactly where he said. The prosecution asked why he initially lied. Javon admitted he was scared. He didn't want to believe his friend had done something so terrible, but eventually he realized he had to tell the truth. David Howard testified about receiving strange text messages on Valentine's Day morning from Anitra's phone. The messages asked for his address, even though Anitra already knew where he lived. Most significantly, Scoot testified that he saw a black Toyota Corolla with red pinstripes circling his block multiple times that morning. He recognized the vehicle as belonging to DeMarcus Little. This testimony suggested DeMarcus had Anitra's phone and was sending messages from it, trying to establish that she was alive and moving around Fort Valley. The defense faced a difficult task. The evidence was substantial. The defense strategy focused on several arguments. DeMarcus was a good soldier with an honorable military career. The relationship was complicated, but that didn't make him responsible. The cell phone location data could be inaccurate. Javon Abram was lying to protect himself. There were gaps in the physical evidence. DeMarcus Little chose to testify in his own defense. DeMarcus testified that he had been in a relationship with Anitra. He admitted the relationship had problems. He admitted to the February 5th property damage. But he denied harming Anitra. He denied the actions Javon described. He denied driving to Crawford County. When asked about Javon's testimony, DeMarcus claimed Javon was lying. But under cross-examination, inconsistencies emerged. His explanations didn't always align with physical evidence. His account didn't match phone records. Perhaps most damaging was his demeanor. He appeared to still feel entitled to control Anitra's choices, even as he sat in court accused of taking her life. In closing arguments, the defense made one final attempt to create reasonable doubt. They argued that circumstantial evidence shouldn't be enough. They emphasized that the prosecution's case rested largely on Javon's testimony. They suggested alternative scenarios. But these arguments faced an uphill battle against the weight of evidence. After 7 days of testimony, the case went to the jury. 12 people who had sat through detailed evidence now had to decide. The jury deliberated for several hours. The wait was excruciating. For Anitra's family, hoping for justice. For DeMarcus, facing possible life in prison. To understand the verdict, the charges were malice murder, which means intentional killing with premeditation, felony murder, which means death occurring during commission of another felony, and aggravated assault, which means assault with intent to cause serious harm. After 3 hours, the jury reached their decision. Malice murder, not guilty. Felony. Murder, guilty. Aggravated assault, guilty. The malice murder acquittal surprised some. The jury didn't feel the evidence proved premeditation beyond reasonable doubt, but the felony murder conviction meant DeMarcus would still face severe punishment. The combination of guilty verdicts meant mandatory life in prison. When the guilty verdicts were read, Anitra's family experienced a flood of emotions: relief that the jury believed the evidence, grief that no verdict could bring Anitra back, satisfaction that DeMarcus would be held accountable. DeMarcus's face showed little emotion. Assistant DA Neil Halverson then addressed the court. His statement was powerful and emotional. Halverson became visibly emotional as he described the impact of the crime. He said, "Anitra Gunn will never be able to breathe air on this earth again. The appropriate sentence is that DeMarcus Little never be able to breathe free air for the rest of his life." He continued, "The laws of this case give this court 2 options. The facts of this case demand just 1 sentence: life in prison without the possibility of parole." Judge Williford had discretion in sentencing. For felony murder, Georgia law allows either life with possibility of parole after 30 years or life without parole. Judge Williford addressed the courtroom. She acknowledged the devastating impact. She noted the evidence of escalating behavior. She considered DeMarcus's age and military service, but ultimately, she concluded that the severity required the harshest sentence. Judge Williford sentenced DeMarcus Little to life in prison without the possibility of parole for felony murder. Additionally, she imposed a consecutive sentence for aggravated assault. The combination meant DeMarcus would spend the rest of his natural life in prison. He would never be eligible for parole. DeMarcus was given an opportunity to address the court before sentencing. He declined to make a statement. He didn't apologize to Anitra's family. He didn't express remorse. He simply sat silently as his life sentence was imposed. In separate proceedings, Javon Abram was sentenced for his convictions. His sentence was significantly lighter than DeMarcus's, reflecting his cooperation and his lesser role. Still, Javon faced real consequences for his actions. Anitra Gunn was 23 years old when her life ended in the early hours of Valentine's Day 2020. She was months from graduating Fort Valley State University with her agriculture degree. She had overcome losing her mother in high school. She had built a life in Fort Valley while maintaining close connections to her Atlanta family. She worked alongside other students at a local restaurant. She was known for her gentle personality and dependability. Anitra also tried to handle a difficult situation with maturity. When her relationship with DeMarcus became unhealthy, she attempted to end it clearly on November 1st, 2019. When he wouldn't accept that ending, she blocked him multiple times. When he continued pursuing her, she was direct about his behavior. She told him explicitly that she felt manipulated. She set boundaries. None of it should have been necessary. But Anitra tried. She did everything a reasonable person could do to extricate herself, and it still wasn't enough because DeMarcus refused to accept that she had the right to leave him. Anitra never got to walk across the stage at graduation, never got to receive her diploma, never got to start her career, never got to fall in love with someone who would treat her with respect, never got to experience marriage, children, grandchildren, retirement. All the normal experiences were taken from her. Her father lost a daughter. Her siblings lost a sister. Her friends lost someone they cared about. Fort Valley State University lost a student. The world lost whatever good Anitra would have done over decades. And all of it was taken because one man believed his feelings mattered more than Anitra's autonomy, safety, and life. Looking back, the warning signs were clear and escalating. November 2019 brought thousands of threatening texts and refusal to accept the breakup. December through January showed continued pursuit, despite being blocked. February 5, 2020 marked physical escalation to property destruction. February 14, 2020 brought fatal violence. Each step followed a predictable pattern that experts in intimate partner violence recognize: emotional manipulation and controlling behavior, refusal to accept the relationship ending, escalation to threats, property destruction. Finally, physical violence. The vandalism incident was perhaps the clearest warning sign. When someone escalates from threatening messages to destroying property at your home at 3 a.m, they have demonstrated willingness to act on anger. Anitra initially didn't name DeMarcus in the police report. Perhaps she was scared. Perhaps she hoped avoiding accusations would make him stop. But that decision meant there was no immediate legal consequence. If there are lessons from Anitra's case, when someone refuses to accept that a relationship is over, that's not romantic persistence, it's a warning sign. When someone threatens others out of jealousy, take those threats seriously. When emotional behavior escalates to property destruction, danger has increased dramatically. Trust your instincts. Support systems matter, but most importantly, the responsibility lies with potential perpetrators, not victims. Anitra didn't cause what happened by laughing nervously or trying to leave. DeMarcus chose violence. That choice was his alone. DeMarcus Devontae Little is currently serving life without parole in Georgia State Prison. He will die in prison. At age 23, he made choices that cost Anitra her life and cost him his freedom forever. Whether DeMarcus has developed genuine remorse is known only to him. His silence at sentencing suggested he either couldn't or wouldn't face what he had done. But regardless, he is being held accountable. Javon Abrams served his sentence for his role. He made terrible choices in the aftermath, choices that delayed justice. But his eventual cooperation was crucial to securing DeMarcus's conviction. Anitra's family continues living with a loss that never fully heals. Christopher Gunn lost his daughter. Fort Valley State lost a student who should have graduated. Everyone who knew Anitra lost someone whose presence made their lives better. February 14th will always be painful for those who loved Anitra. Valentine's Day became the day her life ended. That date will always carry the weight of her absence. This case demonstrates how intimate partner violence can escalate from emotional manipulation to fatal violence. How jealousy and controlling behavior are not signs of love, but warning signs of danger. How refusing to accept no is not persistence. It's dangerous. How victims can do everything right and still not be safe. If you take one thing from Anitra's story, let it be this: jealousy is not romantic. Possessiveness is not love. Refusing to accept no is not persistence. It's a warning sign. If someone in your life displays these behaviors, recognize them as dangerous. If you are someone who feels entitled to control a partner, Get help before you escalate. If you know someone in an unhealthy relationship, offer support. Thank you for staying with me through this difficult story. If this case moved you, please subscribe to this channel and hit that notification bell so you never miss an upload. Share this video with people you care about. Because somewhere out there, someone might be in a relationship like Anitra tried to escape. Someone might be experiencing jealousy and control and manipulation. Maybe hearing Anitra's story will help them recognize their situation. Maybe it will give them courage to leave before escalation reaches violence. Maybe it will save a life. Drop your case suggestions in the comments below, and I'll see you in the next one.